So are they government agents?
Yeah.
Or are they something, a little more out there? And get this, some people even connect these men in black to stories straight out of the Bible.
Like we have Eric von Däniken, right?
Yeah.
Very famous for his book, Chariots of the Gods. He's the one who really popularized the idea that ancient astronauts maybe influenced early civilizations.
Totally. And Giorgio Tsoukalos, from Ancient Aliens, he's all about the idea that extraterrestrials have been visiting Earth, like forever, leaving their mark on our history and everything.
And then we have, on the other side, Reverend Barry Downing, who wrote the Bible and Flying Saucers, and he argues that a lot of biblical events can actually be interpreted as encounters with extraterrestrial beings, maybe even angels.
So it's like we're dealing with two sides of the same, like, cosmic coin, advanced beings visiting Earth. But are they just, like, really smart aliens?
Yeah.
Or is there something more divine going on?
It's a question people have been asking for a long, long time. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, because we're going to, untangle these theories and, look at all the evidence and see if we can shed some light on this whole thing.
All right, let's jump right in. Let's start with the Men in Black. They've been a part of UFO stories for decades.
Yeah.
Just leaving these spooky trails of chills and missing witnesses and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to 1953 with this guy, Albert Bender. He was, super into UFOs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he even ran this thing called the International Flying Saucer Bureau.
Wow.
He was, publishing newsletters and stuff. Yeah, and he claimed to have uncovered the truth about, where these flying saucers were coming from, and that's when these MIBs showed up.
So he's living the dream, running a whole UFO bureau and everything, and then, bam, the Men in Black. It's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Oh, totally. Picture this. 3 men in, sharp black suits.
Yeah.
And those classic Homburg hats. They go and visit Bender and they tell him to stop investigating. Flat out. And Bender later said he felt intense fear. He saw their eyes glowing. And he even got this telepathic message telling him to shut down his whole operation.
Right. That image has stuck with us. And Bender's experience wasn't just a one-off thing. There have been so many reports of these MIB encounters. I mean, it's become a staple of UFO lore.
It's almost like they're part of the mythology.
Right.
Like the guardians of the secret, making sure that we don't find out the truth about UFOs. And we can't forget about those Men in Black movies with Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh, for sure. They added some humor to the whole thing, but those movies also make you think, could there be these shadowy government agents out there monitoring aliens and everything?
Right. It gets really interesting when you start thinking about it like that. And, author Nick Redfern even suggests that some of these Men in Black could actually be CIA operatives, keeping a lid on things. We all know the CIA has a history of, shall we say, interesting operations.
Oh, yeah. And through all the stories and the Hollywood versions, we do have these descriptions that pop up again and again of what these genuine Men in Black are like. The dark suits, lean build, kind of olive skin. And often they show up in groups of 3.
Yeah, and they're often seen driving, those classic black Cadillacs. But what really sets them apart are these apparent paranormal abilities or even telepathic powers.
So we're not talking about your average guys in suits here. These guys, or whoever they are, seem to have something extra, something that's just not normal. It's they exist outside of the rules.
Right. And that's kind of how we try to tell the difference between the real MIBs and, the pseudo MIBs, people who might be pretending to be officials or trying to scare people, but without those weird powers.
Right. There's a difference between, hearing a ghost story and actually seeing a ghost. One's just a fun story. The other one is, something else. And I guess it reminds us that we can't just judge a book by its cover. Priests wear black, judges wear black, Johnny Cash wore black. They're not all trying to silence UFO witnesses, right?
That's a really good point. Black can have a lot of different meanings, depending on the context. In some cultures, it represents authority, formality, even sophistication.
Exactly. It's we're kind of conditioned to think of black as mysterious or even evil, but that's not always the case. But speaking of appearances, get ready for a twist. Our deep dive is about to go biblical.
Yeah, the story of Abraham in the Old Testament has this really interesting parallel to MIB encounters.
Okay.
So in Genesis, Abraham is visited by 3 men. Sounds familiar, right?
3 men showing up out of the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing the connection.
Right, and remember how wearing black sackcloth was a sign of mourning and repentance in ancient traditions? Well, it's interesting to think about if those 3 men who visited Abraham could be seen as an early MIB encounter.
Okay. I see where you're going with this. Could this be like ancient history reflecting these modern UFO things? But how do those paranormal abilities that people talk about with Men in Black fit into the Bible story?
Good question. In the story of Abraham, these three guys, they seem to have some kind of supernatural knowledge. Like, they even know what Abraham's wife Sarah is thinking. And they're described as messengers of God sent to deliver a message about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
So they're not just, dropping by for tea. They have a purpose, a mission, and they have powers we just can't understand. And then it gets even weirder, right? Because Abraham is told to do this strange ritual where he has to cut animals into pieces. And then things get really interesting.
Right. Then a smoking furnace and a burning lamp show up. Okay, so it's not a black Cadillac, but it's definitely not your everyday experience. It's something unusual, something that could almost be interpreted as like a UFO sighting. Imagine someone describing that today. We'd probably be thinking spaceships and strange lights, right?
Totally. It's kind of wild,
Yeah.
We've gone from Men in Black trying to keep people quiet about UFOs to, like, maybe reinterpreting these ancient biblical events as, well, something beyond what we understand now. This new documentary, The Age of Disclosure. The Age of Disclosure. Their main point is, well, it's a big one. 80 years, they're saying. 80 years of the government keeping alien encounters secret. And like a whole program to figure out and maybe even copy, technology from UAP.
They have all these military people in the film talking about their encounters. They go into detail. Like this one, a square, red object the size of a football field, seen near Vandenberg Air Force Base. And reports of these giant black cubes flying around with like clear spheres inside them. And of course, the famous Tic Tac UFO, the white one, shaped like, a Tic Tac. They talk about stopping instantly, changing direction on a dime, reaching speeds up to, get this, 32,000 miles per hour. Well, you've got the director, Dan Farah. He said he wanted to present this, credibly, not make it some big sensational thing. But the real focus is on people like Lou Elizondo. He used to work for the Department of Defense. He was part of ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And he believes, really believes, that there's important information being kept from us. Stuff that he says, quote, could change the trajectory of our species. They bring in Tim Gallaudet. He was the chief oceanographer for the Navy. And he's got this interesting idea. He says, what if these UAPs are hiding out in the ocean? Yeah. I mean, we've only explored 5% of the ocean? There's a lot of space down there. And he thinks NOAA, NASA, the Department of Defense, they should all work together, to explore the ocean more, because who knows what's down there. And according to Elizondo, they've even recovered what he calls non-human bodies, multiple species, he says. And he also says that UAPs have messed with nuclear weapons, turned them off and on in both the US and Russia. It's wild stuff.
I was going to say, yeah, Rubio, he was pretty clear about that. I remember that line. He says, repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours, and we don't know whose it is. Going back to the Men in Black for a sec, if they're real, why all the secrecy, the intimidation, the disappearing witnesses? It's all pretty unsettling, isn't it?
It is. And there are a few theories about why they act like that. Some people say they're cosmic quarantine, trying to keep knowledge about aliens from spreading too much.
Like they're trying to protect us from something, or protect themselves from us. But why all the cloak and dagger stuff? Why not just, come out and say it?
Some people believe that kind of knowledge would cause total chaos. Imagine what it would do to our religions, governments, our whole idea of where we fit in the universe. It would be a huge shock.
It would change everything. But wouldn't it be better to prepare people instead of keeping them in the dark? Or maybe, like you said, they're not trying to protect us at all. They're protecting something else.
Right. That's a very interesting thought. And it speaks to our fear of the unknown, the idea that we're not alone in the universe, but those who are out there might not be friendly.
Like a giant keep out sign across the whole galaxy. Let's change gears for a minute. We've talked about the Man in Black as, maybe these scary guys hiding the truth. But what about the folks who think these visitors are divine beings or even angels? How does that fit in?
It adds a whole other level to this mystery. It suggests that there might be a spiritual side to this. you know, a fight between good and evil, but on a scale we can't even imagine.
So we're caught in the middle of this cosmic tug of war between forces we don't understand. And where do the men in black fit in? Are they the bad guys? Or are they, like, just playing a role in this bigger story?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's one that theologians and philosophers and sci-fi writers have been asking for ages. Are they like soldiers in God's army, or are they like rogue agents working outside of, heaven and earth?
And to make it even more complicated, we have people who think the MIBs are just, regular humans working for secret government agencies, trying to keep everything quiet about, alien life. So we have like 3 different stories. Aliens, angels, and government agents. And those sources you gave me, they really go all in on this, connecting ancient myths to UFOs and this huge, unbelievable cover-up that's been going on for a century. It makes you look at, well, pretty much everything in a whole new way. It's a lot to take in. So I got to ask, when you were looking over all this, what really jumped out at you?
Honestly, the thing that gets me the most is the sheer time scale of this supposed cover-up. A century, man. That's like a mind-boggling amount of time to keep a secret this big. You'd need some serious coordination across governments, scientists, the media, everything. It just makes you wonder, how could they pull that off for so long, and why? What's the point of all this effort?
Right, the motivation behind it all. And then there's this whole thing about ancient myths, the idea that they aren't just stories, but like distorted memories of these early encounters with, well, aliens. Like those descriptions of guys descending from the sky with amazing powers. Maybe it was just people back then trying to make sense of advanced tech that they'd never seen before. I mean, wouldn't that blow your mind if it were true?
It would be huge, wouldn't it? I mean, to think that those myths we hear about could actually be based on real events, it completely changed our understanding of, well, everything.
It's a lot to consider, though. You got to be careful about interpreting ancient texts too literally. Mythology, it's full of symbolism, metaphors, all sorts of stuff that's layered in. So trying to extract actual historical events from those stories, it's tricky.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, scientists and military guys who are concerned about this, it's politicians too, both Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah. Like Rubio, we've mentioned him a bunch, but also Kirsten Gillibrand, Mike Rounds, they're all saying, we need to figure this out because who knows what it is? It could be, it could be aliens, it could be some other country, it could be drones, balloons, but we need to know for national security reasons.
Yeah. And that bipartisan thing, that's important.
Yeah.
Because it shows this isn't just some, left-wing or right-wing thing. It's a real concern for everyone. Even Tim Burchett, he's a representative. He's all for making all this information public, and he doesn't even buy into the whole, fear of aliens thing. He says they could just be, quote, another one of God's creations.
That's a different take.
It is. It is. He's more concerned with the government hiding stuff from us than he is with aliens, And there's this guy, Brett Fetterson. He worked for the White House National Security Council on aviation security.
Okay.
And he says, look, we need a system, an official way for pilots, military and commercial, and even regular people to report these things.
Like a UFO hotline, basically.
Yeah, something like that, so that, people aren't afraid to report it. And it might help keep the skies safer for everyone.
Right. So they lay out all these claims, these concerns. But why? Like, why would the government keep this a secret for so long? What do they say about that?
Well, they give a couple of reasons. The first one's pretty straightforward. They're afraid this advanced tech, will fall into the wrong hands.
Like our enemies.
Exactly. They specifically mention China and Russia. The idea is that if they figure this out before we do, well, that could be a problem.
A big problem, yeah.
A big problem. It could shift the whole balance of power in the world. And the second reason, well, it's the classic one, right?
Mass panic.
Mass panic. They even bring up Orson Welles' War of the Worlds broadcast. That caused a huge scare back in the day.
Yeah, people thought aliens were actually invading.
Exactly. And they're saying the government's afraid of something like that happening again. That if people knew, they'd freak out.
So they're protecting us from ourselves, basically.
That's the idea, yeah. What will be the global impact on modern psychiatry? Because this could be, a total turning point in how we think about the mind.